Actually,
Welcome, everyone, to the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, where every journey is worth living. My name is Dr. Dan, and I'm your host for today's episode. I'm a bilingual cognitive behavior and neurolinguistic practitioner specializing in anger management issues, both court-appointed and private, marriage and relationship coaching, dissociative disorders, narcissistic personality disorders, depression, anxiety, dream analysis, and also provide life, business, and retirement coaching support. I provide individual one-on-one session in both French or English, and also do group settings. If you need any assistance, reach out to DMV Therapy and Coaching Services at 301-325-1550, and our website can be found at Life Coach Dan Amzalag. In today's first episode of season 34, I'm very excited to have Greg Copploe and Dani Forrest as our special guests and expressing why learning to let go of the traditional path we were told to follow in order to live a more authentic and meaningful existence. We will also discuss about the fake narrative we are forced to believe in to not stir conflict in our society, how to obey to avoid bringing chaos in our direct surroundings, and how to just accept what we're given without expressing discontent. So without further ado, and as with all of our previous episodes, I'll leave it to the guests to probably introduce themselves, as no one can do a better job. Greg and Dani, the floor is yours.
Dani, why don't you go first, and then I'll go after you.
Sure. My name is Dani Forrest. I am the co-author, along with my co-appearer, Gregory Copploe, of I Am Pink. I'm also the author of 52 Pickup, Life in Perfect Disorder, and I'm currently working on my third book called Sargasso. I have a background in yoga, Pilates, working with families affected by addiction and alcoholism, and I work one-on-one with people who are learning, and as we all are, to move forward mindfully in an often mindless and seemingly heartless world. I am very much right now involved with somatic yoga pursuits, as well as being able to connect the mind and body in order to move forward through the world mindfully in a time where a lot of us are really suffering a lot from not just our personal past, our personal heartbreaks, but also a collective sense of moral injury, as the collective world seems to be, anyway, a lot more mindless and heartless than we'd like it to be.
Greg, your turn.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Dr. Dan, for having us today, too. We hope to inspire some of your audience here. And my name is Gregory Copploe. I am the CEO of a team building company. It's a paint and sip company called Stir Up the Paint. It's a national brand. I'm also an author of 3 books and am a professional gallery artist. And like a lot of us, raised in the 70s, we come from a lot of trauma. I do, a lot of trauma, a lot of sexual abuse. And how we pivot from that and have a life that, is more whole. We don't have to bring it into our present life and move past it and live a more meaningful existence without all that trauma.
Well, I'm very, very glad to have you both here on the podcast today. As you know, happiness
Thank
is
you.
very, very subjective, and we all try our best to be able to understand the concept of it, even though it may be very complex at times, especially the science of positive psychology. And we're getting more and more people requesting on finding the universal answer to what happiness means to each and every one. So I'm glad to have you both here, and we're going to jump directly into what is now going on in our society. I mean, we see so much bad news now, the war with Iran, with everything that's going on, and how we should live our life, what we should do, and all of what's going on now. I've seen a lot of posts on TikTok, on Instagram, about people saying enough is enough with the government and how they spend our hard-earned money with the IRS and so on and so forth. So what's your stance with all that?
Dr. Dan, I have a TikTok account where I post extensively on these matters. And my feeling right now is that the type of reality that we're moving through, this move toward authoritarianism, if not altogether fascism, it starts at the dinner table. It starts in family systems where we are trained to bypass what we know and feel to be true, to deny it and or to justify it. Any of us that have grown up in families that, let's say, are not altogether healthy, if not out and out traumatic, understand that we are all given roles within those families to play, whether we are the scapegoat, whether we are the golden child, whether we are the fixer. And right now, I believe that a lot of the world is in a collective trance right now based on those types of dynamics that are almost ingrained in us at a DNA level.
Mhm.
And so I think right now, what we are called upon to do is to own those parts of ourselves that participated in that dynamic and have brought to bear on a collective shadow level what is happening now. And I think for me, and I think for many of us, the key right now is to be able to live in the duality, to understand that we can have gratitude, we can have faith, we can have hope, and we can seek joy, but at the same time, refuse to normalize what is not decent and what is not humane. And that's a very hard and exhausting job to do. But our role as people who want to continue to be decent and joyful is to keep owning our part in that, as well as to call out the part that is not, whether it is the child exploitation pipeline, whether it is the incursions that we're making on a world basis, or whether it is the falling of institutional guardrails. We all play a part in that, and we are all each our own guardrail in how we move around in the world, in our little micro world, as well as in the macro world as well.
Well, Greg, do you want to second that, or based on your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's so much chaos for me. What I do really to maneuver through it, and it really helps me, I curate my own reality. I cannot live necessarily in what is going on around me 24/7. I just can't do it. It's too much stimulation. It's too much negativity. It's just too much sadness for me. I just can't. I'm so much of an empath, and it really affects my soul, my whole being, and how I maneuver throughout my day. So I curate what I say my own reality. I curate what I look at. I curate what I absorb into my body and my spirit. I curate my relationships. I curate my friendships. I curate my job. It means that I'm handpicking all of these things that align with me spiritually so that I can find a little bit more joy. Because if I didn't do that, I would be completely miserable. And I think a lot of us are. I think a lot of us choose to live in this reality. We're watching it, we're looking at it, we're absorbing it as if we're actually there in it as part of it, as part of the war, as part of the financial burden, as part of all of it. And we have different choices and different selections that we can make in order to find a little bit more joy. And that's what I do. It's all about, for me, it's a mindset and it's curation. It's not easy, but it's necessary in order to find some joy for me.
It's interesting that you say that about this reality, because when you look in the early 2000s, when the Wachowski brothers, now they're sisters actually, they created the trilogy of the Matrix, and we all live in a simulation, in some kind of like a bubble, where even though the you know, like it was very entertaining in nature with the fights and all that, but there was a lot of truth behind everything. I think the message, the underlying message of the producers, it was just to say that what we see in front of us is not real. It's just a simulation that we were forced to fall under. And we never were allowed to think for ourselves, to be able to take initiative, to be able to take responsibility. And we always blame the system. We never really blame ourselves for whatever circumstances that we put ourselves in. And because of that, we became too codependent of a system, a dictatorship system. And then now we wonder why it has taken a hold of us.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Danny and I wrote the book, I Am Pink. I mean, it's all about breaking away from the formulaic life. And what does that mean? We're taught, to go to school, to get the house, get the job, get the boyfriend, the girlfriend, do these things. And we accumulate all this stuff. We go down this road, and then we're like, oh my God, I'm not happy.
Mhm.
Because you've curated someone else's existence. You haven't curated your own existence. And that's a huge problem. And where we all really land and we go, okay, now what do I do? So yeah, I mean, I think that book that we wrote really helps you to pivot from that. The formula is really akin to you. It's your formula. It's not life's formula. It's not society's formula. It's not dictated to you. And how do you find that within yourself? How do you spend time alone, looking at yourself deeply, and as uncomfortable as it is, to be able to pivot and maneuver through that and work through all those issues and things that are inside there, to be able to move forward and take some leaps of faith and know that things are going to work out for you without being imprisoned and stuck, in that reality for, forever.
But if we have a system such as John D. Rockefeller, who created the educational system to be able to let people just follow a bunch of teachers or educators and not allowing us to be able to think for ourselves, and we have trained our brain to be able to allow that as being just normalcy. How
Yeah.
can we now, as adults, especially if we have established a certain pattern in our thought process, and now when we work in organization, when we work for wherever we work for, we don't, we just too afraid to take any initiative. And then we teach our kids to be able to not to think for themselves, not to be creative, not because if you're being too creative, you're not a part of our society because you're kind of like thinking on your own and you're not depending on other people to think for you. So how's going to be the future for the new generation?
Well, I'll speak to that, and there, I have two of my favorite quotes. One, and I'm sure you've heard it before. It's by Krishnamurti. It is no measure of health to be well adapted to a sick society. That's the first one. The second one is you either face your demons or they raise your children. And I'll tell you right now, a real life experience I'm going through. I'm going through the loss of my father, and my father, was the head of a typical patriarchal system where validation came through success, achievement, reflecting well upon him. Happiness, joy, and alternative pathways never sat well with him. And this was a man who was always looking for applause, for dominance, for success, for achievement. And now there's no applause. There's just the hiss of an oxygen machine next to him. And I had a very difficult time with this because I only operated well with him as long as I played the role of his favorite son. And I'm the oldest of six, the only female. And it was a very hard thing for me to do. I shut down parts of myself that needed to feel, that needed, like Greg said, to curate joy, that needed to think outside the box. And now that he is dying, I have to navigate through that minefield so that I can show up so that when he is gone, probably sooner than later, there will be no regrets. But in that journey, I have to reclaim parts of myself and not default to somebody else's narratives. And I think, Dr. Dan, that kind of goes to the question you were asking about how do we step outside of that. Well, it's very simple, but it's very hard, which is you don't accept other people's stories about you. And we do. We accept the government stories about us. We accept mom and dad stories about us, our employers, our children's, our parents. And that's what the curation comes down to is what is my story about me? It has nothing to do with your story about me or your story about you. I can hold space for that, like I'm holding space for my dad right now, but I'm not required to succumb to somebody else's storyline where I'm never going to be the winner and I'm never going to be happy.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah, I
go ahead.
go ahead, Doctor.
About to say something.
No, I was just going to say that no, it's you go first. You go first.
No, I was just going to reiterate what Danny was just saying, that if we live in a society filled with lies about, especially the media, how they try to really change the narrative of what's really happening. And now when we see some images online about Tel Aviv being completely destroyed or Jerusalem, but then yet some of my friends send me pictures to say everything is intact. Yeah, there were a few buildings that were damaged and all that, but everything that you see is fake. So how can we, not being there to be able to prove otherwise of what the fake media is feeding us with so much shit, how can we kind of like figure out what to believe and what not to believe?
Yeah, it's different. And with AI, it's going to get worse. I think we have
Yes.
to rely now more on intuition. We have to rely now more on spirit, how we're feeling, what we're digesting. I mean, it's going to become more and more difficult. But I think, Dr. Dan, you brought up something that was really, really important. And it's like the alcoholic that, drinks and drinks and drinks. It's when you admit to yourself that you have the problem that you can see it. So you said, okay, we live in a simulation where, so when people start to realize that they can actually see what you're saying, that it's tangible to them, oh, I'm living in a simulation. Oh, I can curate my own reality. Oh, I can do these things. when you realize that, that's when you can create and affect change. But a lot of us don't reach that place where we believe that that's happening. The alcoholic doesn't reach the place where they believe they have an issue or problem, or that they're an alcoholic. So you just acknowledging and talking about, hey, we're living in a simulation. Hey, this is happening. Does allow us to sort of believe a different reality and curate and create change. So I think it's super important what you talked about, this exists, it's here. Can you believe and align with me that this is happening? Then we can pivot in a different direction.
Yeah, but being brainwashed by everything that's going on around us, even if we try to believe something different, we try to educate ourselves, to open our eyes, to be more self-aware, more self-awakened to what's going on around us. But yet, because society are filled with zombies that are just accepting what they're being fed with in terms of news, in terms of what's going on around them, then you, especially if you're an empath or someone that is an HSP, which is a highly sensitive person, you kind of try to do everything in your power to be able to please other people. So that kind of drowns or numb your senses. And then at this point, there's not really much that you can do to be able to change anything around you because they are already changing you.
Yeah.
Well,
I
I believe that what is going on right now is extremely disturbing. And I am a highly sensitive person as well. And I find it extremely difficult every morning to wake up to yet another metaphoric or actual explosion going on in the world around me. I absolutely do. The people who have chosen to incarnate right now, it is hardcore. But I will also say that I believe that this has been fated to happen, that this awakening, it's been a long time coming because, as you said, Dr. Dan, we have all been like the frog in the pot of boiling water. We don't know that we're in it until it starts to get really uncomfortable and really, really painful. And we are at that boiling point now. But I think we are forced to look at more and more people, how we are being manipulated. And the good thing about, well, the bad thing about technology is, like Greg was saying, AI, so we don't know what to believe. But the good thing is that there are many, many more independent people getting facts and getting them out there in ways that the mainstream media, A, never could, and B, now can't because there's been too much state interference with what's going on at the mainstream level. So I am able to listen to actual testimony, say, of survivors from the Epstein files. I'm able to see the documents that were redacted that technology knows how to unredact. And I have reliable sources so that I'm able to see what's happening and at least comfort myself that I'm getting a semblance of the truth as I await the sort of the greater awakening to take place. And it's going to be a minute. And we have to just dig in and understand that this is a marathon, and they want us to believe that if we just give up, if we just get confused, then they will win, but they will not.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
and a lot of people don't want, they don't want to be awake. They don't want to find that truth. A lot of people, I'd say 85, maybe and even 90% are enjoying the comfortable flat line of their life. Not a lot happens, not a lot of drama, and they check out and they die that way. They're like, I'm good. So not everybody is looking to, seek the transformation, to find the higher truth, to live a more meaningful existence. Not everybody wants that. So there's going to be a small core group of people that are going to dig through the crap to find the truth, and the rest of us are going to flatline and skate right through it and not see anything at all.
Oh, I believe in the ripple effect, though, because the more awake I become and the more I'm able to move through the world in a way where, yeah, it's challenging and I have my really crummy days, my crummy moments, but if I'm able to get to my own personal truth and move through the world in that truth, it has an effect because we are all so interconnected. We are not all little islands moving around in our own unconscious way. We do affect one another. And those of us who are here right now, who are able to get to the truth within themselves, are here to anchor. And it's a crappy job. I don't want this job. I don't, but I'm here.
No, it's true.
that is so true. But at the same time, so now you mentioned about this awakening and more people are starting to really realize that we live in a society filled with fraudsters, with scammers, with especially 99.9% of the biggest criminals in this country is the government. So when we look at all that, and when we look at how can we fight the government? Obviously, 300 million citizens fighting against them, they will not win. And this awakening has to come sooner than later, because if everyone goes back and putting their head in the sand like an ostrich, chances are that they have won. And you just mentioned about things changing, but at what expense?
Well, it's at the expense of a system that we were all hypnotized into believing was going to save us. An economic system, a financial system, a governmental system. Listen, I've been privy to information from the 70s and the early 80s where the corruption was there. It was just better hidden than it is now. And so the gift that we're being given is that they're not even bothering to hide the corruption and hide the secrecy. It's like, yeah, we can show you what we want to show you, and we're not going to show you what we don't want to show you. We'll tell you what we want to tell you, and if you don't believe it, too bad. We don't care. And that, in a way, is a blessing, because it's forcing more and more people to see. And it's what I said in the beginning. We're relying on all these external guardrails, but we are the new guardrails of a functional, if not democracy, and a functional society. It's got to come down to the community level. I don't know if you're familiar with the works of Octavia Butler, Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, where the author wrote this book in the 90s, taking place in 2025, 2026, where it's a world where people are living behind walls. And if you leave those walls, you're gone. And people are forced to create communities where they are helping one another. It's not about expecting some external system to save you. And I think that that's what we're really facing right now, is that we have to help each other. How we move around the world, how we treat each other, what decisions we make for one another day to day, moment by moment, because it's not going to come externally. There's no one coming to save us, but that's okay, because we have it in us to save ourselves. We do.
Yeah, but then the
And we're
government.
all connected. I mean, it's so funny because Dr. Dan, the NDEs, people say, oh, wow, I went to this place and we're all connected. There's this web and we're all part of it. It's like, yeah, I mean, why can't we just be on this planet and realize that, yes, we are? I mean, it is truth. We are all connected.
But then again, when there's so much racism and the government has created so much hate between us, between cultures, between religions, between all of that,
But it's a lie.
yeah, but
It's
how
a
can
lie.
we reverse all of that? How can we just go back and saying that was just a monster that was created by just the puppeteers, and we have to detach ourselves from those fake beliefs?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not reversing it. It's realizing what's truth and what's not. And now we realize, oh my God, we were digested lies. And now, okay, now let's seek truth. What's truth is. Okay, so that dogs come in all colors and fish come in all colors and flowers come in all colors. Guess what? People come in all colors too. Why is that so hard to digest, right? So we have to seek truth. We have to seek truth. The formula and the formulaic life's got to go behind us now. We got to move forward in a different way.
Well, it's interesting too what you said, Dr. Dan, about how the government has created, whether it's racism or other forms of inequality. Why are we giving the government the power to create anything? And we weren't supposed to. I mean, everyone goes back to, if you're talking about the United States, the founding fathers. But then again, the founding fathers believed that Black people were 2/3 of a human being, that women were possessions, that you could not vote unless you were a white man who owned property. So the foundations that this was built on in the 1770s were rotten. And now they've been basically co-opted and even further corrupted by more of the patriarchy. And so it's on we, the people, to undo this. And it's very hard to undo 250 years overnight. But in a way, the horrific things that are going on are a favor to us, because some people will never see. Some people are in a cult or a trance, and you can't persuade people who are just determined to misunderstand. Because if you think of a lot of the people that are supporting this, they have no other reality to go to if this one fails. They have no other reality. So you got to let them kind of go down with that ship. But there's enough of us, I think, who are not willing to go down with the ship. I do.
Okay, so I'm going to talk on behalf of our millions of listeners out there.
Okay.
Because most of them, what they want to do is, or what they want to know is, where do we take it from here? I mean, everything can be theoretical, but we need practicality. We need to understand what can we do to start to change that system that has been imprisoning us.
I think
you have a voice. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
no, Greg, you go.
No, I mean, we have a voice in a different way now. We have social media, we have YouTube, we can be out there, we can run our own show like we are doing right now as people that can inspire and create a ripple effect. We can expose truth wherever we'd like to expose it. And there are large masses of people that are doing that. The problem is what we're curating. You notice with AI too, if you start to follow a certain thing, and maybe it's not a thing that you find truth in, maybe it's a lie, and AI will continue to feed you the lie and help you believe this lie, and it starts curating more and more of the lie within your feed, and then Facebook starts showing you more of that feed. It's really scary. It's really scary. And so it's up to us really to like expand ourselves in multiple universes in a sense to really expose ourselves to, you know, the good, the bad, and the ugly, to decide for ourselves intuitively what is aligned with us, what works, and then creating that ripple effect with our own voice. The trauma
Right.
steals the voice within us, and it is us that has to strip that away and be able to come forward and use that voice to create that new ripple effect, to educate, to feed people, to give them energy, to inspire.
I have a couple of practical solutions, Dr. Dan, since I'm a very practical person too. I'm a Capricorn. I got a lot of Capricorn planets, so I want bottom line. Don't give me, I don't want airy fairy, So basically, these systems that are overrunning us, whether you want to call it authoritarianism or fascism, they bank on our nervous systems being overrun by information, overrun by stress, overrun by too much saying yes when we want to say no. So, I'm old at this point. Well, I don't want to say old. I'm 62 years old, but I'm old enough to know that I have to take care of my nervous system above everything else. And that means saying a lot more no than I used to. And people from people pleasing families, from messed up traumatic systems, know that people pleasing is a survival mechanism. It's better just to say yes and go along so we don't make people upset and we don't put ourselves in a situation when we don't feel safe.
Correct.
So it's incumbent upon each person to put their nervous system above everything else at the top of that pyramid, and to do what we have to do to protect that. Whether, I don't know, whether it's, somatic yoga, whether it is something creative, artistic. I'm a writer, I write. Whether it's something involving art, like, I know Greg's an artist, and I know that's really important to him. But we are all in charge of finding that place and spending enough time in it so that we don't crash out our nervous systems. That's the first thing. The second thing is, if you care about doing something to effectuate change, you pick one thing that you want to continue to speak out about. Maybe it's immigration enforcement, maybe it's the child exploitation pipeline, maybe it's war, but you can't do all things all the time and find out what's going on about everything all the time. For me personally, it's the children. It's the child exploitation pipeline. Why? Because I spent many years as an educator. I've taught kids from kindergarten to 12th grade. I've worked with kids from at-risk backgrounds, both as a teacher and in volunteer programs for kids whose families had addiction and alcoholism. So I understand that we have a huge system, or a population of vulnerable children that get sucked into these pipelines. And I understand how it happens. I know exactly who these kids are. So that is my thing that I speak to, that I listen to, and I can handle it because I did not experience that kind of trauma. Not everybody can handle this, because to read some of these books and to listen to some of these testimonies are very triggering. And I wouldn't want that for people that can't handle it. But that's my thing. Other people, it might be separation of families. It might be what's going on with the detention centers. Everyone should pick one thing and not shut up about it. That's one practical thing to do.
That actually is brilliant, Dani. So before, and I could go on and talk with you guys, and I would love to be able to have you both coming back as, for, I would say, part two of this podcast, because we can go on and talk about, everything that's been going on, or that is presently going on. And the key here is to be able to bring people to awaken, to get their head out of the sand, and to be able to realize what's going on around them. So before we end, can you tell us, where can people find your books?
Yeah, so GregoryCopploe.com is probably the easiest way, because there is an author section. Dani and I both share a part of that page where you can see all the books. I Am Pink is really the award-winning book that Dani and I just recently published. And we really feel it would be applicable to your audience as far as what it's like to kind of get rid of that formula and pivot and find a new life that's more aligned, to you spiritually, to who you are as a person, without following all the stuff that we were told to follow when we kind of land going, wait, I'm not happy. What happened? So GregoryCopploe.com is probably a good space to land and find that. You can go to Amazon and other spaces too, but it's probably easier there. I also have on that page paintings that I've moved into a black and white space. So I have a lot of professional black and white, really kind of cool impressionist paintings that I do. And there's a little blurb about Stir Up the Paint and how we're, creating a ripple effect and inspiring people through art therapy, which after the pandemic has been really critical to kind of like heal a lot of the brokenness that we're all feeling.
Absolutely. Well, Greg and Danny, that is all the time that we have for today's podcast. And again, thank you both sincerely for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. And we all appreciate your participation to this episode by sharing the importance of being awakened humans to live a meaningful existence and teaching others on how to get their power back when everything in our society is not aligned properly. Now, we see more and more people realizing the many lies we were forced to believe by those in power, and many citizens are now taking actions. More and more people are realizing how fake the system is and how to think for ourselves. So, to our millions of listeners out there, we hope that you've all enjoyed today's episode as much as we did. Now, we're very excited for what's ahead in season 34 of the Happiness Journey with Dr. Dan podcast, featuring a lineup of incredible guests with powerful stories that will continue to uplift and inspire all of you. So here are some concluding words of wisdom. Being truly awake means seeing the world as it is, not as we were told it should be. It's about reclaiming your power, understanding your value, and choosing purpose over complacency. In a society where so much is misaligned, awakening allows us to navigate life with clarity and courage. Each of us has the ability to break free from the false narrative we were fed and to teach others how to do the same. Real change begins when awareness turns into action and courage replaces fear. As more and more people recognize the illusions around them, a collective strength emerges that can reshape communities and lives. Awakening isn't just personal. It's a call to guide, inspire, and uplift others. Every small act of clarity and empowerment contributes to a larger movement of truth and freedom. When we live consciously and intentionally, we create meaning, purpose, and a life that truly matters. Our power is not given, it's reclaimed, and together we can rise. My name is Dr. Dan Amzalag, and you may all keep pursuing your amazing journey in life. Stay tuned for our next episode.